Hello everyone. So we are discussing on various updates based on 50th GST Council Meeting, and today we are going to discuss one of the circular which has been issued recently on the TCS related compliances and how it has to be done in the case of e-commerce operation where more than one e-commerce operator is involved in a single transaction, right? So before we get into the video, let me just explain you how the flow of this particular video is going to be. We will start with explaining what are all the basics concept of e-commerce operation and how we can identify e-commerce transaction, and then we will move on to discuss about the TCS compliances with numerical examples as well, and then we also discuss about section 95 exceptions, and then what is ONDC, because if one has to really appreciate this particular circular, we need to understand the concept of ONDC with more practically relatable examples that we are seeing day in day out, and finally we'll also understand what exactly is the clarification that is provided by the circular, right? So on those lines, let's start off with understanding the basics of e-commerce operation. You can probably see all these topics in chapter wise cut off in the video as well, right? So what is e-commerce operation? If we have to go through the definition which is given in the Act, section 2 subsection 44 and 45 talks about e-commerce operation and e-commerce operator. So e-commerce is defined in subsection 44. E-commerce means supply of goods or services or both, including digital products, over digital or electronic network. Now, e-commerce operator is also defined. So e-commerce operator means any person who owns, operates or manages digital or electronic facility or platform for e-commerce. So let's understand it with a easily practically relatable example. Let us say a particular shopkeeper, a little larger storekeeper in some remote part, or let's say not even remote, let's say tier 1 or tier 2 of the tier 2 city. So he is dealing with electronic goods. So what he does is that in order to sell or promote his business, so he is basically having his own website wherein he has listed his own products, so which he is dealing with, his own electronic products. So what happens, he is in a location where there are a couple of more electronic goods suppliers as well, who are probably dealing with different products which is not probably the same as what he is dealing, okay, but somewhere closely related to what is his line of business. So they approach him down the line and they are asking him like, can you also list my products as well in your website? Let's make it very clear. In this first scenario where he is listing his own products in his own website, there is no concept of e-commerce operation. But when he is listing the product of other suppliers, then he is doing the role of an e-commerce operator. So most of the time, difficulty arises where one has to understand and identify what is e-commerce operation. The reason being, it's no more like only just Amazon and Flipkart taking the lead. We are able to see too many e-commerce operators, too many e-commerce businesses booming, right? So it's sometimes even to facilitate some of the textile industry, or it could be in the form of supporting some of the agricultural produce supply. It could be in the form of supporting some of the cooperative society oriented supplies. It could be like mom entrepreneur products. So however way it is, literally the kind of e-commerce operation for services, in fact not only goods, for goods and services are increasing tremendously in India. So e-commerce has actually opened up a lot of business opportunities. So on those lines, it's first of all, what is most important is to understand and identify that yes, this particular business model is what is e-commerce operation, because business people will more focus on the business opportunities. But what is also important is to connect the theory in the tax law with the real business scenarios that is happening, and only when these two are being connected, we'll be able to ensure that the compliances are also taken care of, right? So identification of e-commerce operation is very important. Now moving forward, Obviously, in India today, too many e-commerce platforms are there. Just to give you more relatable examples, we can talk about Amazon, Flipkart, or Netflix, or let us say Uber, Ola, or Swiggy, Zomato, or Myntra, Nykaa, and whatnot. We literally have, Redbus. So there are literally too many e-commerce operations which is happening. Zepto. The list just goes on and on continuously. So with this kind of e-commerce operation booming, what happens in GST law is that there is a procedural compliance which needs to be ensured under the GST law. TCS has to be collected by the e-commerce operator, which means the customer places the order to the supplier through this e-commerce operator. So the e-commerce operator only collects the money from the customer and then he is going to remit it back to the supplier. While he does that, just like how he is going to collect his commission part, how he is going to deduct his commission part, he should also collect this 1% of TCS. So this is 1%, which is 0.5 plus 0.5. It is not 1 plus 1, 2%. Okay, let me clarify. So it's 0.5 plus 0.5, 1%. That the e-commerce operator has to collect it when he is making this transaction. So let's understand with some example. So let us say the customer is going to purchase a particular goods from the supplier through Amazon. In this case, Amazon is the e-commerce operator. So the supplier has sold this for 500 rupees, 500 plus 5% GST, which is 525. So the customer is purchasing it for 525 rupees, which is going to directly go to this Amazon only. So Amazon will collect this 525 rupees, and out of which Amazon is going to first of all reduce its commission. Let's say 10% commission on 500 rupees value. 500, so for 10% on 500 would be 50 rupees is what is the commission of Amazon. On this 50 rupees, Amazon is supposed to pay GST at the rate of 18% as a regular registration, as a regular registered taxpayer, which means the 9 rupees of commission, the 9 rupees of GST on this 50 rupees of commission, Amazon will be paying through GSTR 1 and 3B, which is going to be filed in the regular registration. Now coming to e-commerce operation, the e-commerce operator should have a separate registration for the purpose of TCS compliance. So which means every e-commerce operator should have two registrations. One as a regular registration and the other one as e-commerce operator for the purpose of TCS compliances. Now what happens is that as a e-commerce operator, he has collected this 5 rupees of TCS in this particular transaction. So this 5 rupees is going to be deposited to the government through cash and not through ITC, right? So 5 rupees will be deposited through cash, and there is another 9 rupees of tax which is going to be remitted through GSTR 1 and 3B. There he can utilize this ITC. And then coming to the supplier, so the supplier is actually going to receive the money, which is 525 minus 50 rupees of commission minus 9 rupees of GST on the commission minus 5 rupees of TCS. So net he is going to receive only 461 rupees. Now the supplier has to file his GSTR 1 and 3B, wherein he is going to declare this 500 rupees of transaction. But when he is going to discharge that 25 rupees, he has got 9 rupees of ITC on the commission that he has got, and he is also having the ability to encash this TCS which the e-commerce operator has deposited, the 5 rupees, that can be accepted by the supplier, and the moment he accepts this, it is going to get reflected in his cash ledger, not even in his credit ledger. It's going to get reflected in the cash ledger. So when I am remitting this 25 rupees of tax, I can reduce the 9 rupees from ITC, and I will also be having the cash amount of 5 rupees, which can also be used for the purpose of tax payment. So this is how typically the e-commerce operation, the TCS related compliances works, right? So the exception for a TCS is that there are these some of the e-commerce operation which has been specifically exempted from TCS. Rather, the e-commerce operator should only pay the tax itself. So not just the TCS. So TCS you need not do. In fact, the tax itself has to be paid only by the e-commerce operator. The actual sales happens for the supplier, but the on the sale value of the supplier, on the value on which tax liability is going to be paid by the supplier, that tax has to be remitted. That tax itself has to be collected from the customer and remitted by this e-commerce operator. There are 4 such exceptions which has been notified so far under section 9(5). Category number 1 is restaurant services. Let us say for example Swiggy, Zomato. So even if the hotel is registered, still Swiggy, Zomato is responsible for paying the taxes of 5% on the restaurant business. And another one is this housekeeping services. Let's say for example Urban Club. And then you have the other one which is hotel accommodation like Make My Trip or Oyo Room, whatever it is. And then there is this transportation of passenger like Ola, Uber, right? So these are all, we are not going to dive deep into this section 9(5). But basically what is that one thing that we have to understand is this is an exception which has been carved out where the e-commerce operator is only going to pay the taxes. So accordingly how the reporting has to come in GSTR 1, 3B, everything has also been provided. And this is on 9(5). Now coming back, before going to this particular circular, as I explained you, what is important is to first of all understand this concept of ONDC. Now what is this ONDC concept all about? So what happened previously is that there was a duopoly by Amazon and Flipkart in India when it comes to the e-commerce operation. So the problem or the hiccup with this e-commerce operation is that both the buyer as well as the supplier should be in the same platform, which means the buyer should also buy it through Amazon and the seller should also sell it through Amazon, for example. So in order to break that stereotype, what has happened is that the ONDC concept has been approved, accepted, and that has been encouraged or promoted in India. So through that, there are a lot of small scale business vendors who were actually losing their business due to this e-commerce operation. They have in fact started gaining due to the introduction of this ONDC. So what happens is that there is no necessity that the buyer and the seller should be in the same platform. So there are multiple e-commerce operators who are involved in a single transaction. So let's understand it with a simple example of Paytm, right? So today through Paytm we can book anything that is required or purchase anything that is required which are available in some other e-commerce platform. Let us say for example a bus travel ticket which we want to book. So for a bus travel ticket typically that is available only in an e-commerce platform, let us say Avibus or Redbus, which is there as a separate e-commerce platform. But this e-commerce operator, he himself is not operating the buses. The buses are operated by the Travels. So the Travels is the actual supplier of services, whereas that is connected through the seller side e-commerce operator, which is this Avibus. But as a customer, I am booking this bus ticket only through Paytm, which is the buyer side e-commerce operator. So this is one such example. So as we stand today, if ONDC concept has been predominantly there through Paytm or My Store, Craftsvilla, and then pin code, Magic Pan. So these are all the ONDC related platform which is predominantly there in India. So to understand further, what happens? The question here is, since there are two or more than one e-commerce operator involved in a single transaction, question arises as to who has to collect the TCS, who has to do this TCS related compliances, who has to do this GSTR 8. So this is typically what is the issue here or the query here. So this has been clarified in the Circular 194. So Circular 194 specifically clarifies on two scenarios, whereas so if the supplier is different from the supplier side e-commerce operator. So in the example what we gave you now, there is a Travels which is involved. The Travels is the supplier and Abibus or Redbus is probably the e-commerce operator of the supplier. And if the e-commerce operator of the supplier is different from the supplier himself, then in this chain of transaction, the responsibility to collect TCS and remit it is only on the supplier side e-commerce operator, who is ultimately going to collect the money before making that final remittance to the supplier. So which means First of all, when I make the ticket booking, the money is going to flow from me to the e-commerce platform, which is like Paytm. Paytm will, let's say, it is collecting its own commission, and then the money gets again passed on to the red bus or ugly bus, whatever it is, and from there the money is again going to be, the commission is going to be again deducted, and then it is going to get passed on to the supplier. Here the e-commerce operator on the supplier side, which is this red bus, so he is the one who is liable to collect the TCS. So this is one scenario. The second scenario, what the circular also talks about, is that if the supplier and the e-commerce operator of the supplier are one and the same. Let's say, for example, through Paytm I am ordering Alexa. Alexa is a product of Amazon. So here Amazon is the e-commerce operator. Amazon is also the supplier of the product, which is Alexa. So here the point is not just about the brand, both should come under the same PAN, same income tax PAN, right? Obviously it has to be two separate registration for e-commerce operation and one for the regular registration. But the point here is whether both these are under the same PAN. So if the supplier e-commerce operation and the actual supplier both are under the same PAN, in this case Amazon being e-commerce operator and Amazon being the supplier of Alexa, then the TCS compliance cannot be on Amazon, because here the e-commerce operator and the supplier are one and the same, right? So there cannot be a TCS compliance over there. In this case, the TCS compliance has to be taken care by the e-commerce operator who is there in the buyer side, right? So this is another thing which has been clearly clarified in this particular circular. So I hope with this, we would have had a better understanding. Let me also give you another example. Let's say, we book a movie ticket. Let's say PVR movie ticket is being booked through Paytm. Here PVR is the e-commerce operator and PVR is also the actual supplier of this, theater, the Cineplex. So in this case, the TCS compliance falls on Paytm, who is the e-commerce operator on the buyer side. So this is another example that we can think of. So I hope this circular would have been, better understood with the kind of examples also that we have tried to give in this video. Hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please do let us know your feedback in the comments as well. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. GST with Saradha.